Now, a row has broken out in Fulham in West London over a type of low-traffic neighbourhood scheme whereby a fine is issued if a vehicle isn't registered or exempt, which is leaving some women vulnerable and fearful about their safety. That's because many Uber drivers are now refusing to enter the area for fear of getting a fine, as much as £130, although Uber passengers can register their booking to enable the car to enter the zone. It is confusing and it's potentially dangerous, with some women being dropped on the borders of the zone and then left to walk home alone, often in the dark. Jessica Ewer reports.
Fulham's Clean Air Scheme, a type of LTN, has been credited with cleaning up parts of the borough that are particularly polluted. But critics say another issue is now affecting residents.
And as a result of this scheme, Uber is now refusing to drop women at their front doors and instead is dropping them at the top of Parsons Green and other points far from their homes, forcing them to walk home alone in the middle of the night. Added to this, there was recently a letter circulated by a security force along the Wandsworth Bridge Road informing residents that there's a sexual predator on the loose targeting women walking alone at night. The video went viral. I had no idea not only how many women in the area have actually been affected by this, but how bad some of the stories were, how alarming some of the stories were, how far they've had to walk, how late at night.
Ness has since started a WhatsApp group for women to buddy up when walking home. She says the Met have increased patrols in the area.
Although the response has been genuinely fantastic, they have limited resources. What happens when this happens somewhere else in the city and they then have to direct their attention there? And we haven't solved this issue in Fulham, where the girls just get to go back to walking empty streets with no protection.
The cameras that drivers are seeking to avoid are dotted around residential streets. This is one of many spots in the South Fulham area that has one of the clean air cameras. As vehicles pass through, it checks their registration. If you don't live in the borough and you don't have a vehicle that's registered to Hammersmith and Fulham, you could be charged. Black cabs, buses and emergency vehicles can also automatically drive through the cameras, but it's not yet automatic for Uber. They told us in a statement, "We are aware of these concerns and continue to be in conversation with Hammersmith and Fulham Council to try to find a workable solution for both drivers and local residents." The council told us, "It's over 3 years now since we first offered Uber free access to the cameras to allow residents to be picked up and dropped off at their homes. We told Uber this simply requires a technical solution at their end. Uber has said there are data protection issues which prevent them from sharing the number plates of their drivers." The installation of the scheme, as with many traffic calming measures across the capital, has divided people locally.
It became a nightmare for us to drop the kids in the morning, to come to pick them up. We need to go all around many roads.
Our clients, which majority are from local clients, they're all happy with it and I think reduced the traffic dramatically.
We were horrified to discover between 35 and 40,000 cars a week were using the terrace to cut through.
You can't really see the notices very clearly when you're driving and you suddenly see something up there.
The scheme to the west of Wandsworth Bridge Road is still in its 18-month trial phase. A group of locals told me all of the borough is actually accessible to Ubers, but a lack of awareness from drivers was ongoing.
There is nowhere in the whole area that Uber cannot access. It's as simple as that. You can come into any street and come back out of that street without needing to go through a camera. So to a certain extent, there's an element of bad faith from all parties if an Uber is refusing to go into the area.
Whilst confusion is ongoing, the safety of residents is being questioned.
We've had watch thefts, people hospitalised, quite seriously injured. And yeah, I really don't think that this helps. The drivers do not want to go through where the cameras are because they get fined.
Can Uber and the council find their way here, or will they stay stuck at a crossroads?
Well, Teresa, this is really confusing, isn't it? But amongst the confusion, it's women who are being left vulnerable.
Yeah, and I'm afraid we see from Labour in London an anti-driving approach. And that has impacts on women's safety. It also has impacts on people with disabilities who are mobility impaired. There are plenty of people and businesses in this city that depend on cars and vans to get around. And I regret the fact that the London Mayor and so many London boroughs just seem intent on penalising them. Vehicle transport is a vital part of our economy and it enables people to live the lives they want to live, particularly in the suburbs where public transport isn't as extensive as it is elsewhere.
Clive, is that what's going on here? Is the Labour councils, the Labour mayor to blame?
Well, you're not talking to the right MP about LTNs, because I think that they're the worst form of NIMBYism. But in this area, as I understand it, it's not in my constituency or Teresa's, is that it was done with the cooperation of local residents. So there's a lot of satisfaction with the scheme because of the number of cars that were going through there, and this is an issue with Uber. I mean, if they cared about their customers, they would deal with Hammersmith and Council, and they would sort out access for their drivers.
Uber say it's a data protection issue, and the council says they need to figure it out.
The council, all councils are registered for number plates for parking enforcement and all sorts of road enforcement. So I don't think that holds water. That must be easily surmountable. This is a question for Uber. So I would say to the residents, don't get Uber. I mean, if Uber don't care about you enough to deal with the
sometimes
local
that's the easiest method. I mean, you were a black cab driver back in the day.
I was a black cab driver, and I would advocate black cabs every time. So
often more expensive.
Hammered by some of these measures.
That's a fallacy as well, isn't it?
Sometimes they
trips
are.
Off. Why is it sometimes?
Because I have actually compared, just anecdotally compared the prices on one trip and another.
Uber will only drop their prices when there's not much demand. But as soon as there's a lot of demand, then prices go up. You don't know what you're going to pay when you get in an Uber cab.
The Labour Mayor of London wants to collect 1 million fines every year.
But do you think that's what this is about? Because actually, as Clive said, a lot of local residents really do support this issue, and we heard from somebody there in that report saying that there were, before this came in, 35 to 40,000 cars a week on one of these small roads.
I mean, of course, getting local support and local consent is important, but we are just making our city less productive. Sometimes it feels like the Mayor and TfL are just trying to make it harder for people to get around and just do their jobs. Mayor Khan wants to turn London into a hostile environment for cars and vans.
But he also wants to clean up our air.
And his flagship policy on that, ULEZ expansion, his own independent impact assessment said it would only have a negligible impact. Again, it looks more like collecting lots of money from
you're talking about that's not what we're talking about.
That's absolute nonsense. That is absolute nonsense. You can't go around saying that the ULEZ doesn't have any impact on the air quality. That's just ridiculous. I mean, we know we're having a mayoral election, but come on, let's stay on the side of the truth. I mean, the fact is that this is something that's supported by local residents. We can't go around dictating to people what you do in your local community. I thought you supported that sort of thing, but this is a clear case of Uber not being bothered about their customers, and that's where this problem lies. And as for Sadiq Khan not wanting people to get around London, he's frozen fares in London 5 times out of the 8 years he's been there. 5 times. That's not stopping people getting around London.
But Clive, you've got to acknowledge that very often the result of an LTN is the traffic is funneled down the main roads and it's people living on those roads, many of whom come from lower income communities, who suffer. They're socially divisive and disadvantageous.
I agree with you about LTNs. I think LTNs do have that impact.
All right. We must leave it there. I'm sure we'll come back to this again in the coming months before the mayoral election, as you say.